45,222 gun-related deaths, an increase of 25% from the previous year and 43% from the decade prior. There has been a debate over gun legislation for many years, and it is obvious that there's no simple solution to this difficult subject. On one hand, there are many who think that the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution guarantees the right to carry arms, and that any attempt to control or restrict access to firearms violates this right. Some contend that more stringent gun control is required to lower the number of gun-related fatalities, and that the widespread availability of firearms is a significant cause of gun control or gun violence. The truth certainly lies somewhere in the middle in a truly significant sense, as with quite a few undeniably complex situations. It is true that firearms can be used for self-defense, and that our Constitution basically guarantees us the right to keep and bear arms. However, it is also true that there are an alarmingly large number of gun-related fatalities in the United States, and that something needs to be done to address this issue. Gun violence is typically not caused by a single factor, but rather by a complex interaction that includes access to firearms, mental health difficulties, poverty, and cultural and social standards. While having access to firearms is a big contributing factor, it is by no means the only one. Given the complexity of the problem, it is obvious that there isn't a single all-encompassing answer to this issue of gun violence. There is a large number of actions that can be taken to largely minimize the number of gun-related fatalities in the United States. Gun laws vary widely from country to country. For example, in Japan, citizens must pass a mental health test, a drug test, and a background check before they can purchase a firearm. However, in the United States, it is essentially very easy to own a gun unless being a convicted felon or having mental health issues. Shockingly, I found in Nevada, citizens are not required to tell anyone they even have a gun. This brings into question, what can be done to make sure people do not end up, guns do not end up in the hands of the wrong people? First, we can make sure that people who are legally permitted to buy firearms in a significant sense are able to purchase them. In order to prevent firearms from falling in the hands of criminals or people who pose a threat, background check systems must be strengthened, and loopholes that allow people with a history of violence or mental illness to purchase firearms must be closed. For example, in 1938, Federal Firearms Act made it illegal to sell guns to convicted felons or certain classes of individuals. Although this was plenty long ago, there are a large number of steps that can be specifically taken to reduce the number of firearms in circulation. Second, we need to make an investment in resources and assistance for mental health. All things considered, mental health is a key cause of gun violence, and tackling this problem is crucial to lowering the number of gun-related deaths, which is very high in the United States. This primarily entails funding mental health resources and assistance, as well as attempting to fundamentally lessen the stigma associated with mental illness, thus increasing access to mental health care, both of which are critical. In fact, 95 to 97% of gun-related deaths are from individuals with mental health issues. Third, poverty and social injustice need to be addressed. Studies have revealed that those who are poor have a significantly higher risk of being involved in gun violence. As a result, tackling this issue is crucial to lowering the number of gun-related fatalities. This entails cultural and societal norms that in fact contribute to poverty and inequality, as well as sponsoring initiatives that aim to reduce and combat poverty. Fourth, we need to have a genuine national discussion about gun violence and subtly come to kind of some understanding on this subject. When researching, Switzerland had one of the lowest gun violence rates at nearly 0%. That shocked me. Switzerland has 2.3 to 4.5 million guns, and with only 8.2 million citizens, there were only 47 gun-related homicides in 2016. In comparison, Switzerland has a 0.09 homicides per 100,000 people. In the United States, that number is 4.46. However, Brazil and Mexico have strict gun laws, but have high rates of gun violence. That brings into question, how is this possible? According to the Insider, Switzerland has a culture of responsible gun ownership. Guns are seen as a privilege, not a right, and when buying a gun, the government requires a background check and provide evidence of physical and mental understanding. In addition, military service is required for all Swiss men and required to keep a service weapon at their home. Ammunition is kept at a separate location as well. Lastly, the high GDP per capita and the low rate of poverty income inequalities relates to lower violence in Switzerland. In Brazil, the rate of poverty is at 10.75%, according to Statista, compared to Switzerland at 0.1% in 2017. When accounting for certain gun laws, what needs to be accounted for are demographics, rate of poverty, and crime rate. Every country must create different solutions to this perplexing problem. This mostly entails having an open and courteous discussion regarding the factors that contribute to gun violence, as well as the actions, despite what the general public may believe, can be performed to somewhat minimize it. While these actions may not entirely eliminate gun violence, they can contribute to a reduction in gun-related fatalities and a generalization of a better and more secure society for all. In conclusion, it should be noted that the issue of whether or not gun violence or gun regulation should be specifically forbidden and highly complicated and contentious, with reasonable arguments on both sides. While other countries may have the ability to have high gun mounts, the US, as well as every other country, has different laws, demographics, and state of government. Something needs to be done in particular to lower the number of gun-related fatalities in the US, and this will require a multifaceted approach that addresses the underlying causes of gun violence, including access to firearms, mental health issues, poverty, and cultural and essentially social norms. Thank you. All right. All right, now I just have a couple questions related to the speech that I would like to discuss. The answers can be as brief or as lengthy as you want. To begin, we can start with Dad. What are your thoughts on mental health and its relation to gun violence? You gotta unmute. You gotta unmute.
I think it's clear that mental health has a huge impact on gun violence, whether it's a individual who's depressed, harming themselves, or somebody who has some other issues involved in a mass shooting. It's clear that people are more willing to use firearms when their mental health is not sound. So in my mind, there's no doubt.
All right, what about you, Mom?
Oh, the same question?
I mean, you can answer a different question.
Oh, either.
Yeah, how about Katie? Katie, do you want to answer? What are your thoughts on mental health and its relation to gun violence?
Oh, does she have it
Sure.
muted?
I think it's definitely like a major factor to gun violence, and not just like an individual level, but because the population of the US struggles a lot with mental health in general, for various reasons.
Yeah, for sure,
And
for sure.
I think you can see the correlation, especially with like mass shootings, because that's usually always related to mental health issues.
I agree for sure. All right, we can start with Mom on the next question. Should guns be prohibited in some states, however, allowed in some, like certain guns?
Well, I think the US is so diverse that I think you'd have to go, and it'd be ideal if you had laws across the board. I doubt that would happen because there's such a different viewpoint of gun ownership in different parts of the country. But I think, I think it maybe should be at a local level, but I also think then people can just transport the guns across state lines. So then that doesn't really help the problem as well. But I do think there are a lot of like more rural communities that feel like they need guns, or hunting communities. But I think it's the type of guns that should be looked at that's allowed. More just different states, the state lines.
I completely agree. Depends on the location, demographics.
Yes.
All right, what do you think, Delaney? Should guns be prohibited in some states, however allowed in some?
I agree with what she said. I think it's like depends on the type of gun, and it's like really unnecessary for certain, like for a normal like citizen to have a certain type of gun. I think like there's no reason for let's say like me, like to have like a military grade gun, or like I don't know like what they're called exactly, but like the more dangerous ones.
The rapid,
There's
the rapid shooting ones.
There's like no reason for that. But it's
agree.
gonna be, yeah, that's about all I have to say about that. I
agree. RPGs or rapid shooting guns should definitely not be allowed. They have no use. Or we can go back to Dad. How often do gun owners, in your opinion, actually prevent crimes? It's the last question.
Yeah, I do think that's certainly a main argument that gun proponents use, and they've cited examples of where people, and even recently in mass shootings, have been there with their own gun and prevented something much worse from happening. But I think if you simply weighed, it does happen, but I think it's less often than people think. I think if you looked at the weighting of all the violence, accidental shootings, people doing something when they're angry or something that happened as a trade-off versus someone being there and taking care of a bad situation because they have the gun. Yeah, I think it certainly outweighs that, but it does happen. But I think it's used and highlighted as a reason for gun rights more than probably merited.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that's the last of the questions. But in conclusion, the issue of gun laws is one that requires careful consideration and a nuanced approach. It's clear that the right to bear arms is an important part of our Constitution, but it is also clear that the number of gun-related deaths in the United States is alarmingly high, and that something needs to be done to address this issue. The solution will likely require a multifaceted approach that addresses the root causes of gun violence, including access to firearms, mental health issues, poverty, and cultural and social norms. In order to protect the rights of law-abiding citizens to possess guns, while also ensuring that firearms do not end up in the hands of those who constitute a threat to themselves or others, we must cooperate to find common ground and solutions. I want to thank every one of you for taking your time to think on this crucial matter. I'm grateful for the chance to discuss this matter with you, as the future of our nation rests on the capacity to do so in an open and polite manner. We can all work to make society safer and more secure if we band together. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Thank you.